Hello, friends. It's Carla, your online doctor, with today's Live in 5. Today is Monday, June 15th. It is 5 p.m. Okay, so this post was supposed to be this from last week, but it's actually pretty relevant for me today, and I'll explain. By now, most people have heard the World Health Organization's ridiculous comments that asymptomatic viral transmission of COVID-19 is extremely rare. Okay, which they retracted. That would basically mean, though, we all don't need to wear masks or social distance anymore and only need to stay home and isolate if we are sick. Okay, that is definitely going against what the powers that be are suggesting. So let's clarify, okay? First of all, let's discuss asymptomatic versus presymptomatic. Some people who are, quote unquote, infected and test positive will never show any symptoms of COVID-19. These people are truly asymptomatic. But people who are presymptomatic, when they test positive, are ones that will develop symptoms in the coming days. But of course, you don't know who will be in which group until the days pass by. Okay, so Monday, somebody tests positive. You don't know if they're asymptomatic or presymptomatic. By Friday, one of them may be asymptomatic and the other one may be starting to show symptoms. So that would be the difference between the asymptomatic and presymptomatic person. This is why in the beginning they were recommending testing only if you had symptoms because of the lack of test kits. Okay, but in reality, you have less false positives and false negatives if you are testing a population of people who are likely to be positive. You're going to have a lot of false positives and negatives otherwise. Okay, but if you're going to assume all positives are positive, then some people are going to be asymptomatic positives and some are going to be presymptomatic positives. Now that anyone can test and people are screening, you're likely to see more asymptomatic people that test positive that may or may not go on to become symptomatic. So in addition, some people never develop the classic symptoms of fever, cough, and other respiratory problems. Some people only manifest mild symptoms, including some GI complaints, maybe some diarrhea or some nausea, muscle aches with possible low-grade temperature, and maybe just fatigue. Not necessarily things where you would say, I wonder if I have COVID-19, especially if you don't have a known exposure. Studies are showing infected people are most infectious when they first begin to feel unwell. Okay, but of course, the exact moment isn't perceived by someone exactly the same as somebody else. I may not feel well if my temperature goes up 1 degree, and other people may not even know if they have a low-grade fever at all. They just may, especially if you spend time outside, you don't know if you're just feeling hot because you've been outside or because you actually have a fever. Now, maybe one person feels unwell when they have a temperature of 99.5. That's me. And another one may not feel unwell till their temperature hits 101 or higher. So many factors come into play that it is just too late to prevent transmission to other people, which is why anybody that tests positive is presumed positive until they're not. Okay? Early studies also suggest that people with mild symptoms can be infectious for up to 8 to 9 days and longer for people who are more severely ill. Some estimates of around 40% of transmissions may be due to asymptomatic cases. Not what the WHO said of it's extremely rare, 40%. Okay, but that's not asymptomatic. That's potentially presymptomatic. Other studies showing people can be very infectious roughly 2 days before symptoms appear. That's presymptomatic. I think medical experts need to be humble right now and explain, we don't know. This is new for all of us. Don't make definitive statements. I try to say all the time, based on the knowledge I have today, I am stating the following. Okay, that is the best we can do, but always err on the side of safety for the majority of people that might be infected if you are the one with the positive test. Wear a mask when in public places with other people, social distance, and wash and sanitize your hands. Stay home if you are sick, and social isolate for 14 days if you test positive or until you have 2 negative tests 24 hours apart from one another. Now, the reason why this hit home for me is my mother tested positive. My mother is 84 years old. She lives here in South Florida. She tested positive 2 weeks ago from tomorrow, Tuesday, okay? No symptoms. We all believed it was a false positive. The place where she lives said you have to isolate for 14 days. She was completely alone. They retested her 2 days later because I said, I don't believe she has this. Of course, that test came back yet today. 12 days after they tested her a second time. The first test came back in 48 hours. The second one took 12 days. The third one, because I insisted on another one last week, came back today also, and they also antibody tested her. The second and third tests were both negative, and the antibodies were negative. So, in fact, my mother's first test 2 weeks ago was a false positive. She was completely asymptomatic, but she, in fact, never actually had the virus as far as we can tell at this moment. So, it is a lot to take in. It is a lot because she was alone for 14 days, and that's very difficult for her and for my family. We were under a lot of stress. But this is happening all over the place. So you have to understand that for protection of the people around you, if you test positive, you need to isolate for 14 days or retest multiple times, getting negative results to prove one was a false positive and not the other way around. So I hope that makes sense. Pretty scary when these major organizations are putting out statements like that after we've been home for 2 to 3 months, social distancing and isolating ourselves, and it was a big mistake. I think they made a huge mistake, and that's why they retracted their statement and then tried to correct it and make themselves look a little better. They should know better. Anyway, on that note, it is pouring here. I'm surprised we haven't lost connection. So I'm going to sign off, and I will see you guys again tomorrow for another Live in 5.